Paradigm Shift and Radio Reversal have existed for a long time in analog technologies of radio waves, but we're branching out into the internet now because it's the times we're living in, right? 2023. The world's online, right?
Andy just discovered the internet last week.
Mutual, la-la, mutual, la-la. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
Joining for another Radio Reversal podcast episode, and we are recording this on the unceded lands of the Turrbal, Yagara, Jagara, Yugarapul and Quandamooka peoples, and pay our respects to elders past and present, and to all First Nations communities across the country, recognising that sovereignty over these lands has never been ceded and will never be ceded, and that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities have been resisting, refusing and disrupting colonialism since 1788. We are in solidarity with Land Back.
Welcome to episode 30.3. I'm not sure exactly how we'll badge it, but the third and final part of our introductory series, welcoming you and putting up some framing around the Radio Reversal podcast. I'm Nat, I'm here with Han today, and we just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the recordings you're about to hear, which are, just like in episode 2, recordings from the podcast launch event we had on Sunday. Han, what was your feeling about the event, the launch? How'd it go for you?
Oh, it was so great. We had such an amazing crowd of people there to see us. I was having a bit of a rough health day and kind of like put myself in the muso corner, and that was really great, that because we have such a great team and an awesome group of people, that I was able to, just make a bit of sound and not have to worry about the running of things or so it's really nice that we got to share the load in that way, but also that, we had such an amazing group of listeners that turned up that really it felt amazing to do that in person. I think Andy said, and you might hear in some of the recordings, so often with radio, we're just kind of trusting that the audience is there, that there's people listening and participating in that way. And there was no trust needed. We really got to see and feel the love from our community. So that was just such a special thing for me. Also, Matthew and Jodie Rottle together with me is It's Science and Feelings, our little band, and we made some really fun house band kind of inserts into the conversation, and that's something we love to do. So that was a really fun component for me as well. What about for you?
Look, I think I just felt really touched by the turnout, by the incredible support for Radio Reversal and Paradigm Shift and 4ZZZ in general and community radio in general, to have all these people turn out on a Sunday afternoon when, again, there was so much happening in Mianjin.
It was a big weekend.
It was really big. And to have people turn up in person and be such generous and excited listeners and contributors to the space, and people just pitching in and helping out, as is often the case at community events. It just felt really, really special. I felt really, just really touched and kind of held. It really did foreground for me the community part of community media making, which from behind the broadcast desk is not always immediately apparent. I didn't do an amazing job at signing people up to our Substack, but if you're listening to this, you might be one of those amazing people who signed up to the Substack at that event. So thank you very much for that. Today, for this second part, we tried to sort of thematically group up our recording of the event. And so today, we'll be playing through some performances by the wonderful, incredible Phil Mansour, Andy Paine, producer of the Paradigm Shift, and poetry performances by Lamise Hamuda, as well as we'll play through a bit of a chat that occurred between Lamise, Jonathan Sriranganathan, and Andy around politics and poetry and music making and how these things tie together or are in tension with each other and what the point of all of this is.
And creative engagement with politics and political engagement with creativity. The kind of entanglement and different approaches that invites, both from people making and people co-creating by I guess, listening or reading or otherwise engaging with these works. And that was it was a pretty special discussion to be present for. I mean, also, I think it's probably been said, but we can't say enough just how incredible it was to have such a lineup of amazing Meanjin creators, thinkers, makers, speakers at this event. Like it was kind of overwhelming and like in the best possible way.
Absolutely. I felt totally overwhelmed by the stardom of people willing to volunteer their time to have a little chat with us about our radio shows and our podcast projects, right? It's really moving. But Hannah, I wanted to ask you, as someone who does a lot of thinking about this, tell us a bit about, I wanted to draw you out particularly on this idea of companion thinking, which I know is a framework that you've used a lot to think through the kinds of ecologies and communities in which creative thinking and art making happens. Can you tell us what companion thinking is and how we might be able to think about both the recordings we're about to hear as well as maybe this podcast project more generally through the lens of companion thinking?
Companion thinking was kind of, weirdly framed. It was kind of my argument for not having a proper methodology when I was doing my doctoral thesis. And it came from the idea of Pakistani-Australian scholar and thinker Sara Ahmed's concept and term of companion texts. And I want to read you a little quote from Ahmed because she really, she goes into a deep way about how those texts, we work with them to go deeper into our chosen subjects, whether or not those texts initially refer specifically to those subjects. So a companion text is one whose company might spark a moment of revelation in the midst of an overwhelming proximity. They might share a feeling or give you resources to make sense of something that had been beyond your grasp. Companion texts can prompt you to hesitate or to question the direction in which you are going, or they might give you a sense that in going the way you are going, you are not alone. And that's end quote. It's from Living a Feminist Life, if you're interested in reading more from Sara Ahmed about that in particular. And then this concept for me really struck me as a way that I love to create with others and to think with others. It's a way of kind of, in our first podcast episode, we talked a fair bit about pedagogy and learning in public and kind of fumbling through. And I think the kind of idea of companion thinking for me is another way of approaching those kinds of possibilities. In particular, this kind of idea of companion thinking I've then developed further with my amazing companion thinker colleague and bestie, Jodie Rottle. Together we wrote a paper about companion thinking, this kind of thinking in company, the emergent, active process, ongoing process of opening to the potentials of co-creating ideas or co-engaging with ideas and the kind of relationships that are at play. It's a kind of way of approaching a relationality. And for us, this kind of idea of company, it consists of a variety of perspectives. It's different versions of yourself. You can kind of be a companion to yourself. And I think for those of us who are a little bit self-punishing, it's a way of kind of approaching a bit of a softening towards the self and treating oneself a bit more like a friend. We're all in therapy for this. We don't need to skirt around it too much. As well as taking seriously the companionship of space, place, environment, even time, in as slippery as that term is. It's a term that for us crosses the human, non-human, other than human, more than human possibilities. It's all of that at once. It's no longer about differentiating the bounds of human individual and labeling subjectivity and objectivity. It's embracing shared environments and making a commitment to companionship. It's a flexible process of unfolding, but it's about actively contributing to the dynamic between ourselves and our companions. So this kind of active contribution is the part in which, a lot of philosophy would locate subjectivity or the will, but it's I think of it also through a lens of Octavia Butler's idea of shaping change. Is it Octavia Butler or is it Earthseed? And some of that feels very channeled in a way. But in Octavia Butler's books, The Parable of the Sower and The Parable of the Talents, this idea of attending to changes as they're occurring and attending to those relationships as they're occurring and noticing where you do have the potential to actively participate participate in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that among the many things that makes me think about, I guess, in terms of thinking about public pedagogy and learning collectively and learning out loud, what that makes me think about is how, I guess, how it challenges notions of knowing that reside in the individual kind of master of knowledge, right? To borrow from Julieta Singh's wonderful framing around the importance of resisting mastery. Because what it does is it turns our attention not to the idea that there's like a genius soul person who holds knowledge and transmits it to us, but instead that what we should do is attend to the kind of communities and spaces through which learning is made possible and through which the sharing of knowledge and stories and understandings becomes more possible. And once that happens, and this is definitely something that has been a big theme for me throughout Radioversal as well as throughout my time with the Brisbane Free University, is that learning that happens in those spaces is then held collectively. It doesn't become, and nor should it become, a kind of possession or attributed to any one person.
Absolutely.
It's something that is belongs to the kind of ecology from which it emerged, and learning to respect that, to care for that ecology, to acknowledge it properly feels
and not
really
in the
crucial.
kind of like, I guess there's sort of been efforts by artists in particular to bring on the death of the author and have like collective authorship, but that can still end up erasing where thoughts are coming from. And instead, I think this is more to do with citation practices and feminist citation politics and really like acknowledging how many different actors there are and like how entangled you are as you are coming to thoughts. So,
absolutely. And I think that's a really important point as well, right? That we still need to be accountable for the thoughts and the learnings that we're sharing, and accountable for, again, the spaces in which they occur, acknowledging who they're including, what they're including, who and what might be being excluded from those spaces, and how that in turn shapes what kinds of thinking is possible. Love companion thinking, and I loved watching. Not being an artist or performer myself, I feel like I just get so much joy watching It's Science and Feelings, watching you and Matt and Jodie in this kind of playful
muddling through.
Muddling through, just always kind of responding to each other, making space for each other to get louder, to get quieter, it's so there's an intimacy to it that I think for me really does reflect the kind of vulnerability that really hard learning, especially in political contexts, demands of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, It's Science and Feelings. I mean, the name itself grew out of Jodie and I using that as a refrain to comfort one another through some particularly rough parts of our lives. Why is this happening? Why am I suffering in this way? And kind of going, there's like nervous system, blah blah. There's all of these scientific facts, and then it's also just like it's feelings. It's like it's inexplicable. It's a bit like, and that's a little bit the kind of approach that we have to making music in this way. It's like we've had so much training collectively and individually, and have come in various degrees of like being recognised as like masterful musicians, and it's about kind of like undoing that. Like it's about surprising ourselves as much as anyone else. So there's something so fun about it because it feels so personal, and it feels like it's really we're really just kind of exploring and feeling things out, but getting to do that publicly, and that's something actually you'll hear in the discussion between Jono and Lamise and Andy, where they talk about the kind of public pressure of particularly social media to come up with this like finished, polished product, which coming from a Eurocentric classical music training background and imperial colonial institutionalized musicking background, that's something that I feel like I've been grappling since before social media, like that kind of like pressure to do all of the working it out in private and then to only show the polished, finished thing in public. And that has never worked for me. No matter how much work I do in private, the public performance always is strewn with error, which is like, as I've gotten older and kind of like am much kinder to myself, I'm like, it's like neurodiversity and it's capacity, and there's a whole lot of factors playing into that. And maybe it's also like an attentiveness to moments that in ways that I can't quite track with my brain, and things like this that really made me ill-suited to that kind of perfectionism. And it's science and feelings is a way that I get to fuddle through. And radio is another way. Like these kinds of things where I'm just having to do it in the moment and I have to let go a little bit are really important spaces for me personally to be able to free myself of that particular like self-applied but like well-entrained and internalized trap of the pressure to create something that is final, that is finished, that is ready for consumption, a product, So those are the kinds of things that come up for me in this thinking, and I was so thrilled to hear the way that was discussed on Sunday also.
Yeah, and I think the other big takeaway for me from that talk, as well as the event more generally, is that we need to attend to the things that sustain us in life and sustain us in the struggle.
Oh, it's so true.
And that we are often grappling with really heavy, hard things. And in these fights on different lines in different ways for a more liberated and just world. And that means spending a lot of time confronting violence, confronting our own complicities in these things, coming to terms with that, figuring out how to be otherwise, and so many different sides of struggle. And it can also be really hard, I think, in that space. I know it's a big issue for me to find the time or space or permission to find moments of joy and love and connection and playfulness. But those things are so important. And finding them also in these political spaces, right? Not quarantining them out, but also seeing them as part of the connective tissue that can help us sustain our movements and sustain our communities of struggle and practice is really important. And I think, being able to not always rush to instrumentalize everything. Like I think there is a purpose to poetry. I think there is a purpose to music, but also I think it is fine if there isn't sometimes, if what's happening is enjoyment and collective enjoyment coming together. Those things are beautiful too.
This is also reminding me, like, joy isn't, I really have felt my understanding of joy as an affect shaped recently in big ways by the book Joyful Militancy, Building Thriving Resistance in Toxic Times, which is by Carla Bergman and Nick Montgomery, but draws on the thinking and has interviews with a real community of thinkers, including Leanne Betasamasaki Simpson and many others, Silvia Federici. It's quite a big community of thinkers that they draw upon, but they're kind of following what they call a Spinozan current and thinking of joy in terms of an affect that allows you to kind of continue, that kind of like helps with drawing things forward and drawing things in particular ways. But that I think something I've learned a lot through doing things with the Institute for Collaborative Race Research and thinking with that group is spite. It can be a joyful affect.
Absolutely.
It really, there's all kinds of things that are joyful affects that aren't simply just this kind of like idea of happiness or a warm fuzzy glow. But there's these kinds of things that coming together in community, like for this podcast launch, that really, that's so important for continuing. That those moments of joy aren't just about like enjoying ourselves in that particular way, but they really do give us, like, they fuel us in ways that allow us to continue. Yeah,
Absolutely.
They sustain us.
They nourish. This is also reminding me of the work of crypt theorist Leah Lakshmi Piepzna Samarasina, who writes about so much about the communities that sustain disabled people at the bodily level and how that then also is intimately linked to the ways that they are sustained in struggle and how they work collectively towards the liberation of all disabled people and all oppressed peoples more generally. And I think, again, that joyful relation to bodies, place and each other is a really important part of this political praxis. And so, still riding that buzz and that gratitude. And huge thanks to everyone who came out and supported us on Sunday, to the wonderful performers and contributors and speakers, to everyone who just pitched in and set up chairs and packed things away, and everyone who came along and gave us their listening ears and open hearts. It means absolutely everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think this means we're going to jump in with the inimitable Phil Mansour. You!
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks again for the invitation to be part of this here today. I'd like to acknowledge also that we are on sovereign lands of the First Nations people and that their resistance continues. Listening to, it's mostly Jonathan that does this to me in terms of reflecting on being a little brown kid in the suburbs. And I think of that because the power of 4ZZZ is and was that this little brown boy who wanted to play the guitar and sing could somehow get heard on the radio. And you don't know the power of that to be, you know, sort of 19, 20 years old and sitting in your car and suddenly you hear yourself on the radio and you think, oh, well, something is possible. So 4ZZZ's been a long part of that journey for me, and I've never quite made it to even to the mainstream of 4ZZZ, but there's enough space around the edges there for someone like me to exist and to be encouraged. But I've got a new song that might suit a day like this. My family came here from what's now called Lebanon. My father came as a Syrian, on a Syrian passport, and I have a lot of family left in that part of the world. A couple of years ago, there was another uprising in Lebanon, and they had a phrase that was, all of them means all of them. It was about the fact that we don't just want change, we really have to just burn the system to the ground and rebuild it in the image of something better. Anyway, so I'm going to have a little bit of a go at this. I might test myself. So if I get a few of the words in a little knot and I forget a few of the chords, please forgive me. Yeah. So thanks again to podcast people. I hope we hear a future of interesting things. I'm actually at work when the radio show's on, so the podcast will mean that I can listen to, which is a good thing. Money's their God and profit their religion. They bought our silence with debts and illusion. If we're asleep, we were only pretending. Today we survive and tomorrow we fight. And they claim from their mansions that we're in this together. History has taught us we should have known better. If we're asleep, we were only pretending. Today we survive and tomorrow we fight. We rise, push the scales from their eyes. And all of them means all of them. Claim the new day that must come. There's money for killing but not for the living. Our only value is if we enrich them. If we're afraid, we were only pretending. Today we survive and tomorrow we fight. And we rise, push the scales from our eyes. All of them means all of them. Claim the new day that must come. The sky is broken when enough is enough. We rise like a tide, standing side by side. When the lion awakes, the storm has arrived and the vultures descended. Left us no faith in the future they're stealing. If we were afraid, well, now we're determined. Today we survive and tomorrow we fight. To rebuild the world in the image of freedom. share the land and respect all the dreaming. If we were afraid, well now we're determined. Today we survive and tomorrow we fight. And we rise, push the scales from our eyes. And all of them means all of them. So, originally in Arabic, but we're going to do this together because this is sort of live radio. So you thought that every time you were listening to the radio and they pushed a button, it was just a tape, but there's actually these people sitting in the studio there. It's magic, isn't it? Anyway, so here we are. All of them means all of them. 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 And all of them means all of them. All of them means all of them. Claim the new day that must come. Thank you.
How fantastic was that? And if you ever wondered what we do when music is playing, we're essentially singing along, sometimes frantically deciding what we're going to say next, and a lot of it is snacks and water and chit-chatting more. Thank you, Phil. That was amazing. That was Phil Mansoor. This is the launch party, so welcome everyone, and I'm going to hand it over to Andy.
Thank you. It's so nice to have everybody here. One of the things about radio is that you have to assume that people out there are listening. It's so nice to have people here in the room. Know community radio, right? It's about community, about a group of people, and so it's great to have you all. And I don't normally get to play my own songs on the radio for reasons of social etiquette, and so it's nice to be able to be the music as well. All right, this song's about not waiting for the world to get better, but finding the magical 3 letters that are of empowerment. I turned on the radio, open a mag. Oh, what's the chords again? I turned on the radio, open a magazine, flicked through channels on my TV. It did nothing for me. Just vacuous rock stars, doll celebrities, Hollywood fantasy, fake reality. But the stories relevant to our lives are the ones they never tell. If you want something done right, sometimes you just gotta do it yourself. DIY. Up my guitar, started singing a few notes. Met others doing the same, decided to put on a show. Our lounge room was the stage, our friends were the crowd. Promotion was the posters we put up around the town. No one ever came up to me, offering fame and fortune. The options, as far as I could see, were to sit around doing nothing or DIY. I've sang a lot of songs since then, played a lot of gigs, wrote down my best ideas in photocopied zines. I've met a lot of people, travelled across the land. The best songs I ever heard were the ones sung by my friends. But you know the music and art are really only the start. Another world is possible, but no one's gonna do it for us. DIY. DIY. Thank you. I'm going to play one more song, but before I do, I'll do what Jono did, and I'll give a shout out to my amazing wife, Beck, who has been screen printing all the Paradigm Shift t-shirts, which many of you are already sporting. I've got one here myself too. And who also created the logo for the Paradigm Shift. Has been an incredible support in listening, offering feedback and encouragement, and putting up with the time I spend making the Paradigm Shift, and also being part of trying to put the ideas into practice, and living out the politics every day. So thanks, Beck, for everything. And I'm going to play a new song like Phil, so I hope you like it. Here's a shock. This one's about trying to change the world. And gambling. I don't bet on horse racing, don't watch the Melbourne Cup. I don't care much for fancy dress or horses getting shot. And I like watching sport, but I don't place multi-bets, cause it's how you play that counts, not who wins and who loses. And I don't fancy a flutter on the pokey machines, cause they're just the rich stealing from the poor, preying on addiction. But let's play for real, let's raise the stakes. All we have to lose are our chains. Let's take a chance, let's roll the dice. Could we make this world a better place if we tried? I don't buy lotto tickets cause I don't want to be a millionaire. We'd all have everything we need if we could just learn to share. And I don't go to casinos, don't find them glamorous. Tax dodging, money laundering, crooks bribing the government. And I don't play poker cause showing emotion's okay. And I don't buy shares in the stock market cause I want capitalism to fail. But let's play for real, let's raise the stakes. All we have to lose are our chains. Let's take a chance, let's roll the dice. Could we make this world a better place if we tried? We cross now live to the race for planet Earth. It's a hotly contested field and the stakes are high. Bookie's favourite is the status quo, it's got a lot of money behind it. Also expected to perform strongly, apathy and corporate greed. In with an outside chance are imagination and people power, and as they say folks, it's not over until the race is run. They're entering the stalls now, and they're off! Corporate greed got away very strongly. Apathy staying with the pack, the hot status quo is holding steady. Imagination's looming just out of view. People power seems to be struggling a bit though. I think there's a disagreement between Horser and Ryder over which direction to run in. They're coming up, they're approaching the final turn now. Corporate greed's looking very confident, but it may have used up too many of its energy resources too early in the race. Things are definitely heating up as we approach the final turn, and they're on the home stretch now. And it's anybody's race. Let's play for real, let's raise the stakes. All we have to lose are our chains. Let's take a chance, let's roll the dice. Could we make this world a better place if we tried? Thank you.
Absolutely inimitable Andy Paine. Can you believe it? I can't overstate how excited I am about the Paradigm Shift podcast being launched. I feel like this incredible back catalogue exists of conversations with activists from across so-called Australia, and it's just so exciting, the work that you're doing, Andy, and I'm so thrilled that Andy asked Radio Reversal to launch our podcast together. Feels like a big honour. I'm also very excited for our next performer, Lamise Hamuda, our dear friend and an absolutely extraordinary poet and writer, has agreed to come and do a little bit of poetry for us. Lamise is a youth worker, a writer, and with her dad, Hazem, this year published a book called The Shape of Dust, which you should definitely get your hands on if you can. The one and only Lamise Hamuda.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I was outside gas bagging. And okay, cool. Now I'm here. I just need a moment to actually arrive. But it's so wonderful seeing you all here today. So excited for Anna and the team for the launch of this podcast. I get to sometimes show up on Radio Reversal as a guest, and it's always a really great time, particularly chatting with Anna. She's always so insightful. And the whole team, Han and Shreya and Nat, they're all really, really amazing, wonderful people. So it's so nice to see so many people in support of their work and what they're trying to now do with this podcast. I'm going to be first sharing a poem by interdisciplinary artist and writer Grada Quilomba. If you're not familiar with her work, she's a Portuguese artist and writer. She works across race, post-colonialism, gender, literature and theatre. Her work's been quite revolutionary within Portugal. I first came across her work in Portugal, actually, and I thought this very simple poem of hers kind of suits what the vibe of all this is. I don't know if I have the word for it, but I will be accompanied by Han on the flute, so this is going to be really cool. When they speak, it is scientific. When we speak, it is unscientific. When they speak, it is universal. When we speak, it is specific. When they speak, it is objective. When we speak, it is subjective. When they speak, it is neutral. When we speak, it is personal. When they speak, it is rational. When we speak, it is emotional. When they speak, it is impartial. When we speak, it is partial. They have statistics. We have stories. They have authorship. We have testimony. They have facts. We have opinions. They have knowledge. And we have experiences. We are not dealing here with a peaceful coexistence of words, but with a violent hierarchy which defines who can speak and who can produce knowledge. Thank you. That's the kind of poem that you always wish you were the one who wrote. I just think it really speaks to the kind of work that Radio Reversal tries to do, Paradigm Shift, community radio, is that assertion of authorship over our own lives, that assertion of authorship over our truths, the ability to speak clearly, to not be moderated or marginalised or diminished or undermined, to stand in the facts of our lives. And I think that's really powerful to have those spaces. And so that's why I'm so grateful to these spaces and so grateful that moving up here to Meanjin came with finding these spaces too. So this next poem involves a costume, which I will prepare very professionally by putting it on the floor. I first wrote this poem in 2017, so a while ago now, and it was in response to some funding that had been announced for mosques to increase their securitization. Fences, security, cameras, all of that kind of thing. And this policy was met with a lot of enthusiasm from the community that I grew up in, which I thought was so weird because we'd spent so many years fighting against cameras and securitization being in our houses of worship. I revisited this poem recently and revived it, changed it a bit to suit current times, but I still think the anger at the heart of it, the injustice at the heart of it still rings true today and still rings true for many issues that we face beyond my specific experience within the Muslim community, but within that specific experience is also universal understanding. Okay, just shaking out the adrenaline, They called them hotbeds of extremism, put eyes in our mosques for their protection, put eyes in our mosques for our protection from the right-wing terrorists that they spent years breeding, and we accepted. $55 million in funding for securitization, no community consultation, never a chance to say, I don't want your CCTV state deception. I want healthcare and education. I don't want security and high fences or cameras. I want security and human connection. How dare you keep inviting the boys in blue over the youth who end up in their prisons? Tired of you denying that this isn't a state of structural racism, telling me to play by the rules and have faith in the tools of oppression because there's no more war on terror in the COVID age of post 9/11. Now we laugh at the name Osama bin Laden. What a joke that anyone was ever afraid of him. But I haven't forgotten. Politicians gambling on our lives for elections, the assimilation politics of government-funded Muslim leadership programs. Sorry, I've said too much. You'll probably think I'm a bit of a nut. So I'm going to pass the mic to people's, usually their favourite guest speaker, a so-called political leader. Hello, everybody. How are you going today? It's really wonderful you've invited me to your event tonight. I'd just like to give a shout out to the organisers. I'm here to announce the launch of a program for your great benefit. It's very important that you learn that we get to dictate who gets to fit into this country and how. So we're watching you online, at school and in your houses of worship. We're very proud of the years of patience it's taken to receive this welcome. So have a great night. And as my mate Moe taught me, Assalamu alaikum. A million options with all we could do with the billions spent on invasions, prison expansions and private profiteering, policies that profit no one except those who conceived it. It's little wonder people turn to the call of a paradise dreaming, deadly searches for meaning and life lived as collateral damage, dying for fictions, all because the nation state is the myth we're forced to believe in. So take back your funding and phony securitization, your floundering platitudes. I've seen the depths of the nightmare you've created. The emperor wears no clothes and neither do his prisons. So hold tight to your CCTV footage, parliaments and drones, your militaries, cops and walls. With all of this, you think you're the ones in control. But we are the ones emboldened by visions more powerful than your petty guns could ever believe in. You think you're the full stop, but you're not even a footnote. Trillions of years have passed and you think this is it? This moment in time, this speck called your life? No, that's too short-sighted. It's we who are watching. It's we who are waiting. The seed is dormant before germination, and we are patient across generations. Thank you.
That was the unbelievably wonderful Lamise Hamuda. Yeah! I'm also incredibly excited that Lamise and Jonathan Sriranganathan are going to jump up to have a quick conversation with us, kind of thematically linked to Lamise's performance on the importance of DIY art spaces and the value of creating spaces for artists to test out new work and the ways that community media can be that. So, Jono and Lamise.
One of the things that Paradigm Shift and Radio Reversal have both done, and for Triple Z very much, is supporting local arts as well as local politics, and that's been one of the main virtues of community media. And it's very great to have several artists here, practitioners. And so I guess sometimes in radio we have this dichotomy between like the music side of it and the like politics side of it. But you are both people who mix activism and art. And so I guess the first question is, what's the value of art or poetry in trying to make social change?
You know, I really resonated before when Kevin was talking about wanting to play in a lot of different spaces. And for me, poetry is another place in which I play in and in which I get to explore ideas and communicate ideas and connect with people. And I think activism doesn't always have to be something really tough. It can also be artistic, it can also be playful, it can also be different ways of exploring ideas. And poetry gives that to me.
Yeah, and I think we forget sometimes that even for activists who have like this strong intellectual understanding of why we're doing the rally or the community organising thing or whatever it is, soul and emotion still matter. Like people do need to be inspired or like provoked emotionally in some way and to feel like, to connect at that level. And so, whether it's music or poetry or whatever the form is, but I particularly like poetry because it's it really forces you to be really sparse with your words and think deeply about what are the core ideas that are really going to resonate on multiple levels. And I'm sure we've all had many experiences where you go to an event and there's some very long, very insightful speeches that say a lot of the right things but are hard to connect with, and then you hear a really thoughtful poet stand up and say something that takes a tenth of the time but really cuts through, and it's almost a different form of speech making or whatever that I think means a lot and allows people to connect emotionally with an idea, even if whether or not they're connecting intellectually.
There's a lot of art in the world that people consume all the time, right? TV shows, art galleries if you're doing that, music, radio, whatever. There's no shortage of art, but I guess is there a difference between the sort of consumption of a product of art and some other way of interacting with art that's not just a passive kind of recipient paying money for a product?
Yeah, I feel like probably a lot of us have had these conversations where we're like, we want to make sure our artists are paid fairly, so we want to charge entry and everything's sort of valued through this commercial lens. And then on the other hand, we're like, no, but there needs to be ways to value art other than through that lens. I'm sure you've grappled with that as well, Lamise. I think for me, yes, obviously the answer is yes. There are, maybe more of us are starting to think about how we can organise events that are more participatory in nature, where it's not just some performers up on stage and then a big audience sitting there passively consuming. How can we create events and rituals that are inclusive and co-opt more of us into these spaces? And I like to think some of the events and forms of music and poetry I've created prompt that a little bit more. But it's always easier to just do the thing yourself and perform to an audience. I don't know if you've had a similar experience or...
Yeah, I think it's really important to just be like critically reflective and intentional about why you're doing something, right? And why you're doing that art, and what's your goal? Like, what are you hoping to achieve out of that moment? So, if your goal is like a commercial career, then sure, you're going to think more about the commercial aspects of art making. If your goal is community, then you're going to function in a different kind of way. But I also really want to emphasize that, like, for so long, art has also just been like a friendship practice, right? Like, during COVID, my friends and I used to host like a little craft-afternoon at my house where, Anna and some others would come over and we'd just sit around and we'd play with clay and talk, but that's art making, right? So I just think like taking your mind away from art as a commercial thing, and thinking about the other ways in which you want to engage with it, and also just knowing it doesn't have to be about career. It's just... there's so many things.
Yeah, and I think, the other sort of implication maybe that could be read into your question, Andy, is like, there's already a lot of art out there. Do we even need more? And I think most of us would probably agree that there's a lot of value in the local and the specific. And there's, there's any number of good protest songs out there. But when you hear that protest song about something that happened in your city on the streets, or when you're hearing whatever the context is, a song or a poem or a story about the place that you live or the places that you're connected to, it does resonate at a deeper level. And so I think sometimes I was like, is there anything left to write about? I was like, write about what you know.
Lamisa, you were just talking about like having craft afternoons where people get together and make stuff. And I think this is really interesting too, because politics is creative, right? Mm-hmm. We're trying to create a new world, or we're trying to create a campaign or something that'll resonate with people, or some way of communicating. Is there something like inherent about art making that we need? Do we need to make the world more creative in order to improve it?
Oh, that's such a big question. My initial gut response is to agree. I think, yeah. But I think we also just all have the impulse to be creative, and we all have different ways of expressing our creativity. And we're also all, constrained in certain ways by just also the demands of, life under capitalism and all that kind of thing, where we then have to be kind of strategic about where our creativity gets to go, And so I think a lot of people within activist spaces are incredibly creative because they have imagination. There's this ability to think otherwise, to not just take things at face value, but question why and why not and could it be? And all of that is like, that to me is foundational to creativity, because creativity to me always starts with curiosity and a question.
I think this also makes me think back to that previous question of like how, particularly in Western art traditions, there is that real emphasis on the individual, and how what that does to all of us is kind of reinforces the idea that there are professional creators or expert creators and artists, and the rest of us are not those things. And so even, when we're planning some kind of political action, it's like, can we invite a musician or an artist? No one's available. Okay, I guess there's just no art to be included in whatever this political thing is. But like, why aren't we all singing and doing stuff at like... and that does seem to be different from activism in other places, where it's perhaps more common and accepted that every person will just do something creative or artistic as part of whatever the political movement is, without having to have these specialist artists involved. But that's a very big conversation. I don't know if I've got time to go into all that.
Now, the paradigm shift and radio reversal have existed for a long time in analog technologies of radio waves, but we're branching out into the internet now because it's the times we're living in, right? 2023. The world's online, right? And I'm interested in, there's a lot of creation, online content creation, TikTok videos, Facebook posts, whatever, and there's a lot of art, right? Spotify is like immense, it's eternal, right? You just scroll.
And you just discovered the internet last week. It's like, what is this?
How does it all fit inside the computer? But I guess, I'm trying to highlight something that actually the internet has really changed the way that we relate to art. Making art and consuming art, is it a good or bad thing the way it's changing it? Or how does it change it?
You want to answer? How does it change it? I think one thing that does interest me is and I don't want this to be misinterpreted as a critique of cancel culture, but artists are being more mindful of the fact that when they put work out there into the world, it's there online forever in some format. And I look back at some of the poems I wrote 10 or 15 years ago and I'm like, oh, that's a bit cringe now, or that I didn't quite use the right vocab or whatever. And I think that does maybe make artists a little bit more sensitive and thoughtful, which is a good thing. It's oh, cool, you're thinking about what you're performing on stage before you do it. But it perhaps also takes away a little bit from that willingness to be really experimental and a little bit reckless with the impacts of, there needs to be a sort of raw edge of I'm going to try this and see what happens. But if you're a little bit worried that someone's going to film that and it's going to be up on YouTube for the next 20 years, you are a little bit more, and I've noticed that in myself where I used to be, if I'd get up in an open mic at a poetry night or whatever, I'd just perform whatever I'd been writing that day kind of thing. Whereas now I'm someone's filming this and lots of people are going to see this secondarily and out of context. And so I'm more thoughtful about only wanting to perform the stuff that I feel really certain about. Not just that it's polished, but that I'm 100% sure. So it's almost like every artistic product now has to be a final finished thing. And there's perhaps less room for experimentation and play. I don't know if you've had that similar experience or...
Yeah, I've thought a lot about it. I also really like seeing people's journey, and I used to cringe over some of the stuff that's on the internet about me from when I was younger, but now I just look at it as well, that's part of my journey. I didn't arrive here like this. I didn't, and maybe in 10, 15 years I'll look back on this version of LeMace on the internet and I'll be also cringe, and so I think one of the things that concerns me is the ways that the self-consciousness and the hyper-awareness of being watched curbs self-expression, genuine self-expression, right? And so and that's where it becomes, you fall into content production because you're thinking more about what is wanted rather than what's internal, right? And what you are being moved by. And I think there's always that necessity for critical self-reflection of who am I speaking for? Why am I interested in this? All of those things, the analysis of power relations and all that kind of thing. But also to I feel the internet talks a lot, the internet like it's a person. Discourses on the internet talk a lot about vulnerability, but actually social media is violently hostile towards real vulnerability because real vulnerability is connection. Right? It's seeing and being seen, but on the internet, you're only ever seen. And so it's for me, it's kind of a narcissistic vulnerability. So I'm really cautious of that. And I think one, you should lean into your iterative process. You should lean into your learning journey, but you should be very conscious and critical of the mediums that you're engaging with.
And what you're picking up on there as well is the loss of context for stuff, because so much of the art we produce is highly contextual and it really works for a particular community or a particular moment or time or a particular place. And someone can disingenuously strip that from its context and put it up online and be oh, look what this bloody artist has said now kind of thing. And obviously as a politician, I'm also really sensitive to that, right? I'm oh, they could take one line of one poem and spin that and blow it up. And I think my response to that now has been to just embrace that and say the really provocative thing and welcome it when they do. But it is interesting how, as you say, we're starting to self-censor a little bit more, perhaps for the fear of that.
All right, final question. What do you think are some things that we can do in our local community in Brisbane to support, enable the creation of good and radical art?
Oof. Hang out.
Yeah.
Do stuff together. Don't worry about if it's cool or whatever. If you think it's cool and you're enjoying it and it means something and it's connecting, just keep going. Don't hold yourself back.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think there's been so much, and particularly it did get harder to organise events during COVID, and so now things, you feel it has to be perfect and well planned and really detailed before I can even put on the show or organise the jam night or whatever. But maybe we need to be making more time for those informal creative spaces. And yeah, I mean, there's still lots of jam nights happening, but I feel like in the minds of a lot of musicians, there's like, oh, there's the informal jam night and that's here, and then there's the gig, and the gig is the important thing, and the jam is just preparation for the gig. And maybe we need to start inverting that a little bit more and making more space for the spontaneous and the improvisational and the unfinished and the imperfect, and start valuing that a little bit more. So for people who are trying to be like, oh, what can we do and what can we inject into these scenes to keep them flourishing and vibrant and cutting edge and all that sort of stuff, it's just like create more spaces where people jam and people write poetry together, or just people come together and like splash paint around for a couple of hours without thinking too much about the exhibition at the end of it all. But, yeah.
All right. Thanks very much, Jono and Lamise. And also, 4ZZZ, your local community radio station. It does a lot of supporting of local music and arts and things like that. And so I do recommend you tune into it.
You were trying to give us the prompt to say that. You were like, I hope they say 4ZZZ's great. And we didn't take it at all.
No, I did not pick that one.
Andy wanted us to say yes.
Support your local community podcast.
Yeah, great idea, Lamise.
Yeah.
Thanks, Andy.
We're going to hear a song, I think.
Listening to recordings from our Radio Reversal and Paradigm Shift podcast launch event that took place on Saturday the 24th of September 2023. And a huge thank you to everybody involved. The music you're listening to right now is by It's Science and Feelings, which is Matt Shu, Jodie Rottle and me, Han Reardon-Smith. You also heard from such an amazing collection of thinkers and speakers. At the beginning, Nat and I were having a conversation in the 4ZZZ studios after doing our still live-to-air Radio Reversal show on Thursday mornings. You also heard from other Radio Reversers, Shreya Singh and Anna Carlson, as well as Andy Paine from The Paradigm Shift. We had music and poetry performances from local amazeballs artists, Phil Mansour, Andy Paine and Lamise Hamuda, and then an extended discussion between Andy, Lamise and Jonathan Sriranganathan about the importance of poetry and art making and music making in thinking politically, locally and located on and in the land and community from which this making takes place. Co-constituted and implicated companion thinking. This is the last of our opening series for the Radio Reversal podcast, in which we've interrogated our kind of learning together, learning in public, and we're going to be launching into another mini-series to follow this up. It's based on Raffaella Rosella's You'll Know It When You Feel It exhibition that took place at the Institute of Modern Art. So stay tuned next week.